Chris and Ben have graciously given their time and their expertise to be able to provide this little webinar for you guys. Just give you a little brief explanation of who we are. Veterans Stand Together. We're originally purposed out of veteran suicide prevention, and our founder George Casillas, I'll just give you a quick little brief. He used to teach security classes out in Los Angeles at a community college. During that time, a lot of the veterans that were in the class were asking about benefits and things of that nature, which he had no idea either. So he started looking into it. During that time, one of the students ended up committing suicide. And so due to that and a couple other incidents that happened around that time, he really wanted to make a change in this. And so he created this organization with a 7 milestone system that a veteran can jump in at any time in their life, whether they're homeless, strung out, or barely exiting the military. And we're here to help. All our services here that we do are free for veterans. Our primary direct service is vocational training. So we're just starting up here in Houston. Our first vocational training is project management, that I'm trying to fill that class. And utilizing the different funds that are available for training. We also are going to be starting offering VA claims assistance. This probably in the beginning or middle of March will probably be our first one, and it's something that we're going to probably do once a month out here. So if any of you guys are interested in that, please either message on the chat. If you are watching this via Facebook Live, just send a message to the moderator, and we will, give us your name, phone number, and email, and I'll reach out to you and let you know the status of all of those things. Also, I do have everybody's email, so I will send you guys an email with information on what we do and what we're trying to bring out here to Houston. We're also live in Las Vegas. We're also starting up in Miami in the next month. So if you guys have anybody that's out in that areas, also obviously Los Angeles as well, any veterans that need some help, housing, jobs, resume prep, job searching, interview techniques, anything of that nature. We're here for you guys. We're here for service to help you guys get to where you need to be. We also put on different events and things of that nature. So we'll be sending out events and notifications and things of that if you guys want to get involved as well. So without much ado, I don't want to take too much of you guys' time. I'm going to hand this back over to Chris.
All right. All right. Thank you, John, for the wonderful introduction. Hey, quick housekeeping matter. Just please click on that little Facebook Live link down in the comments of the Zoom, so we can get this going viral. We're already concentrated in Houston, but we're also nationwide, which is really cool. I am a family law attorney, and before I really go anywhere else with that, I'm only licensed in the state of Texas. And Benjamin Brushe, he and I are both veterans. He's an Army veteran as well. He practices criminal defense law mostly here in Fort Bend County, Harris County, Texas, but we are licensed statewide. And we're really excited to talk about today's event called PTSD in the law. I'm a 100% disabled veteran. I served overseas. I know what it's like dealing with PTSD and coming home to a very bad homecoming and not feeling appreciated. And for whatever reason, the PTSD just kind of overwhelms you. It affects the ability to maintain a meaningful family relationship and social relationships and jobs and things like that. And every once in a while, it does turn into an expensive custody battle or divorce or domestic violence. And that's why I kind of want to bring in Benjamin Brushe first to talk about how untreated PTSD could quickly turn into an expensive legal nightmare. And then I'm going to, after Benjamin, I'll talk about the family law aspect. But yeah, Benjamin, do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us about, I'm still letting people in.
Appreciate it, Chris. How y'all doing? Hey, like I said, my name is Ben Brushe. A little bit about myself. So I have been practicing attorney since 2019. I started off at the DA's office in Fort Bend County as a prosecutor. Ended up branching off on my own, and I do primarily criminal defense in and around the area, and really Houston and surrounding areas. I bounce all around. But I appreciate Chris getting this set up today. My portion is going to be very limited, but I did want to go ahead and go over some information on whether it's clients I've dealt with. I do deal with a lot of veteran clients, and just kind of the issues I've seen stemming from just untreated PTSD. So I'm going to go in a little bit of the types of cases I've seen. It seems like anytime I get a call from a veteran, a lot of times it either stems from any sort of drug, alcohol related offense, assault, family violences, weapons charges. I've even had clients come in for reckless driving charges, and get them in the office, sit them down, start talking with them, and realize they have, one gentleman had 4 tours, and that day, stress overwhelming him, things going on, and he just blacked out for a moment, starts taking off down the road. So there's a lot of ways it can manifest for criminal charges. So I wanted to kind of go over that a little bit today. Then we'll touch on a little bit of options, I guess, for veterans in some of the surrounding counties. When you get to this point, it's already a little too late. This is the whole purpose of all this, is to get stuff addressed, reach out to folks where you may be able to receive help before you ever get to this point. But I did want to mention specifically in Harris and Fort Bend counties, options they do have for veterans with veterans courts programs, for veterans sitting in jail, specific pods where they focus on veterans and getting them help, as well as different assistance that may be available. So I'll probably give shout outs occasionally to different organizations I've worked with specifically, but I know included in this Zoom, there's going to be other people that will do the same. So as long as we're getting some help to veterans, that's the main focus of all this. I also will have kind of I know you talked about this, Chris, of having some questions done at the end. Since my portion is going to be a little bit shorter, if y'all are open to it and fine with it, I can even take some questions. If anyone has questions, I can fill a little bit of my time with that as well. All right. So I was, like Chris said, I was in the Army National Guard out of Arkansas for 9 years. I started off as, I was pretty much a paper pusher. It wasn't a glorious job, but started off as a 42 Alpha Human Resource, got to reclass to infantry, and then ended up reclassing to 27 Delta as a paralegal. So I was a brigade paralegal for some time, ended up getting out at my 9-year mark. Didn't want to get over that 10-year hump and make the decision. So ended up getting out. Let me just jump right into some of these cases. So specifically drug and alcohol, this is probably the one that I see involvement with the most for veterans dealing with some PTSD. This also stems into other issues related to family violence, but at the root of it all, I see some sort of issue with drugs, alcohol, untreated PTSD, using this as a coping mechanism. When folks do come into my office, there's very few instances of them actually having some sort of rating with the VA, seeking any help. Majority of the time, that's something they don't want to deal with. I completely get that. But there are a lot of resources out there that I try and use that as mitigation in these cases. You would much rather be dealing with this and getting help without these charges looming over your head. Because when people do come in my office, I use it as kind of a mandatory way to get them some treatment, letting them know, hey, this is what you're dealing with. This case is serious. This is what the penalties are. And what I believe would help this case is X, Y, Z. It normally involves getting in touch with organizations that may be able to assist. I know we've worked with Camp Hope in the past. We've worked with PTSD Foundation of America, and just getting them, pointing them into the direction of someone that can go ahead and get them some treatment, find out what they need, how they can benefit. And then we also use that to help with their criminal case. Okay. Doesn't mean that the case is going to be going away, but for the most part, Fort Bend, Harris County, and other surrounding counties, they do treat veterans a little bit differently. They do listen whenever we provide them with mitigation and talk to them about some of the things they're dealing with, some of the things that are untreated, and some of the things they are doing to get help currently. But you don't want to be getting that help at that point. So keep that in mind. Some of the courts they do have for veterans, Harris County is a little more established, but they do have Harris County Veterans Court for both misdemeanor and felony cases. They roll through, of course, new judges. When new judges come in, that can change every 4 years potentially. And then for the most part, prosecutors that they use, they try and have some sort of affiliation, that prosecutor, with the military. For instance, in Fort Bend, I know gentleman Michael, he is a Army officer. He's the prosecutor of the Veterans Court program in Fort Bend. So they do try and surround folks in those programs with other veterans that would understand some things that they may be dealing with and be a little more open to discussing. So that's something that is improving. Those options are expanding to other counties as well. So places like Wharton County, Montgomery County, they have those in place as well. And they're continuing to expand on that and allow more opportunity for veterans. In jail, if you're ever in this situation where you're stuck in jail, I know specifically Harris County, they have specific pods just for veterans. In those pods, they will have a little bit more freedom, a little bit more assistance being provided. I know in Fort Bend, I dealt with a group called the Xena Project. They were very involved with getting in with veterans in the jail, getting to spend some time with them, and just passing on info of this is who we are, this is other organizations in the area, and how can we help? They've done things as simple as if someone gets out of jail, they don't have a ride. They have someone they can give a call to get them where they need to go. Assistance once they get out of jail for housing, assistance for jobs. I know, like I said, there's going to be plenty of organizations involved in this Zoom that will be able to do similar things. So make sure that there's no excuse. There's plenty of opportunity out there to be able to get assistance if needed. The hard part is just speaking out and requesting that assistance. So that's all I'm going to have. I just want to urge you. It's much easier to be dealing with this now rather than sitting in an office, like Chris said, paying money for an attorney's fees, paying money to post bond in a situation where you may not be able to post bond and you're stuck in jail, or having to do all this stuff in order to help your case in some way. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to take any questions. Like I said, my portion is a little bit shorter, but wanted to leave a little bit additional time. If anyone does have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
All right, thank you, Benjamin. Okay, well, I'll go ahead and just go into the family law aspect. What's interesting about what Benjamin does and what I do is I practice under the Texas Family Code. Benjamin practices under the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure. Criminal defense and family law is very different, but one area where it actually overlaps is in the family violence area. Many times, I am a domestic violence lawyer and I get lots of veterans coming to me. Sometimes the veteran's been battered by their spouse. It's not just women being battered. Men get battered too. But also I'll have situations where a veteran will come to me and accuse of family violence. Sometimes things just got a little too heated at home, and it's something I can handle in the family courts. Sometimes I can get it, if it's like a protective order, I can get it dismissed. Sometimes because the veteran has PTSD, sometimes I can get it dismissed, not because of that, but because maybe the other side just didn't have a case to begin with. It's very multidimensional. But the unique thing is, generally speaking, family violence is something that I can handle in the family courtrooms, but every once in a while, the family violence becomes too serious. Most commonly, it's when the like the hands touch the neck and blocks the airway. Then it becomes a criminal matter, not really for the family courts to hear, and then I have to refer that over to Benjamin Brushe, and then he'll take over from there. And then sometimes when there's a veteran sitting in jail, that's a divorce about to happen, and then it's back to the family courts. So this thing can very expensive very quickly. And last thing I want to see is a veteran losing access to their children through a custody battle. That's the last thing I want to see. And it's actually based on Texas case law and the way the Texas Family Code is written. It's actually harder than you think to take a child out of a parent's life, even if the veteran really was violent and admitted to me that they are violent, and even admitted under oath that they have been violent towards their spouse. Even under those circumstances, it can still be hard to take the child out of that veteran's life, because just because maybe they are violent towards their spouse doesn't mean that the child doesn't have a right to frequent and continuing access to both parents. Of course, every case is different, and every case is very fact intensive. But that is one thing that I don't want to see happen to a veteran. Now, I will tell you, if you go to my website, you could subscribe to my podcast. I literally just hit 100 podcasts the other day. It's really exciting. But one thing I talk about is the things that what I call common denominators in my cases. I don't know if you can see it, but there's this sign on my door over here. It says, no drugs, no alcohol, no debt. I preach that to all of my veterans when they come to me, because those are like the three things that really get you in trouble. Like Benjamin said, drugs and alcohol are the things that he sees, usually because drugs and alcohol affect the emotional parts of the brain, and the emotional parts of the brain overtake the logical prefrontal cortex. Because when you're under the influence of something, or you're just upset and angry, plus you have all that PTSD, it's hard to control yourself, and you might end up doing something you're definitely going to regret. That's where family law and criminal law really overlap very well. What's different is the no debt aspect, because debt by its, we know everybody who was here in the service, what it's like living paycheck to paycheck, and you're in the military, you're on like that dumb little paycheck isn't paying for anything, and you're on, have like 10 different credit cards. I mean, we've been there. We know what it's like. It's hell. And money is a common thing that spouses argue over while in the military at home. It's hell. But what causes the debt itself isn't the issue. It's what causes us to go into debt. And one thing that I notice is usually like some type of depression. And that's why I encourage you to take a look at my podcast. But there's always a underlying reason why we get ourselves into that situation. So, but if you can figure out a way to, cut out the drugs, cut out the alcohol, do the Dave Ramsey thing, the debt snowball, get out of debt, go for it. I totally encourage you to. But if you could cut down on those three things, drugs, alcohol, and debt, that would actually, in my opinion, reduce I call it the stress curve in a marital relationship, to kind of flatten the stress curve, so you don't need to hire a lawyer. So you don't need to see a divorce lawyer, or custody lawyer, or criminal defense lawyer. No marriage is perfect. All marriages have stress. There's always going to be arguments in every marriage. But I guess the question is, what do we allow to spike the stress in the relationship? And in my opinion, the three big common denominators are drugs, alcohol, and debt. That's something that I see. So that's family violence, could possibly lead to divorce and custody battles. And I believe that if we can, encourage our fellow veterans to do what, get that PTSD treated. You can go to the VA, seek therapy or whatever. I know there's all types of, medication and whatnot, to bring down that stress level. But also, one thing that I noticed is that all the if you don't get to the root cause of what the issue is, you're going to constantly deal with family law problems in the future and in your next relationships. So I encourage veterans not to self-medicate with drugs and alcohol, and find out what the root of the problem is. In my opinion, it's just being in the service. You're being taught to be hyper vigilant. They say, in the Army, I don't know about the other branches, but they told us in the Army, complacency kills, stay alert, stay alive, always, be vigilant. The problem with that is when you are been hyper vigilant for so many years, it's hard to come down from that. And hypervigilance is actually one of the criteria for PTSD. I believe the big criteria is hypervigilance. It's where, keeping your head on a swivel. Other things are avoidance behaviors. Maybe you want to avoid large crowds, or avoid realistic movies or realistic video games depicting war. So that's avoidance behaviors. And well, hypervigilance. These are, criteria for PTSD. So if you feel you have those type of issues, last thing you want to do is self-medicate with, drugs and alcohol. Try to find out how you can work with this issue so it doesn't become so serious that it affects your ability to maintain family relationships. Because if the PTSD becomes such a problem, it will, like I said, it can cause complications at home. And now we have a situation where maybe a husband and wife have been married for several years before being in the service. Marriage was never perfect. There were problems before the deployment or just being in the military for an extended period of time. There's always been problems, but manageable. The problem is when you go like overseas, for example, you're and experience some type of stressful event. In the VA, they call it the stressor, whether it's, I don't know, rocket attack, mortar attack, or just generalized anxiety, just the fact that you're in a hostile place or you're always away from home. And just being in a combat zone by itself doesn't cause PTSD. You could be, PTSD from just being on a Navy ship and being exposed to a stressful environment. I mean, if it's not PTSD, it could be something else like anxiety, depression. I mean, there's all types of things that can get us worked up from the service. And the problem is when we bring that back home, what used to be a manageable stress level in the marriage is now no longer there. Best way to explain it in simple terms is, a lot of veterans, they go through military training, boot camp, AIT, whatever. They have a very thick skin. They can excuse my French, but they can take an ass chewing from a drill instructor and it's like water off a duck's back. It doesn't affect them. So they have this thick skin, and that thick skin comes in handy at home. So maybe the spouse is upset, but you're able to manage it. It's all water off a duck's back, and you're able to deal with it. Now, here's the problem. That thick skin will get sloughed off while in the service. The military will wear you down. And unfortunately, that thick skin is no longer there. And now you come back home to the same home environment. Nothing's changed at home. The only difference is your thick skin is gone. And now it's harder to deal with that stress. So what do? Some veterans use marijuana, alcohol, other types of drugs. These things, even going to the VA, if you're not careful, the VA will just keep medicating you. They'll keep giving you pills for everything. Don't let them do that, because it's not addressing the root cause. Yeah, it'll treat your symptoms today, but it's not going to make anything go away. So it's you have to find out what's. I go through the hard, do the hard work in therapy, try to find out how to deal with stress in a healthy way so you don't have to self-medicate. Because in the brain, we have this thing called the amygdala, It's the fight or flight response part of the brain. It's the best way to explain it is think of it like a little barking chihuahua, a little tiny barking chihuahua. It's very nervous. Have you see a chihuahua, it's very kind of nervous by nature. It'll bark at anything. It'll bark at threats and non-threats. The problem with that is PTSD works the same way. It's when you've got this amygdala inside your brain and it's hypervigilant. It reacts to everything. Everything's a threat, and it will get excited at actual threats, and it'll also get excited at non-threats. So if maybe someone offends the veteran or says something the wrong way or something to trigger the veteran, it gets that little barking chihuahua going in the head. That's the the amygdala. And now you've got this fight or flight response part of the brain kind of at the driver's seat steering the veteran. It's a very dangerous situation to be in. And the other problem is we have this thing in the front of the brain called the prefrontal cortex, which causes us to think logically. The problem is when you get that little amygdala going, it overtakes the prefrontal cortex, and now you're basically driven by emotions, and it's a dangerous place to be. On top of that, if you don't know how to treat it, you might treat it through drugs, alcohol, to try to settle it down. And yeah, it does work to some level, but the problem is you start having the emotional centers of the brain taking over more and more, and now you have a veteran reacting out of emotion, possibly becoming impulsive. It's just not a safe place to be, and that's how you get arrested and end up going to jail, and end up paying people like Benjamin Brushe a lot of money to try to get the case disposed somehow. And the other problem is when there's a family violence issue, that's usually a prequel or a precursor to divorce. So a veteran might come to me, or hell, even the spouse of a veteran, and say, hey, I've been battered at home. I'm done. I'm over this. I want out. And even the spouse themselves, they have, let's face it, they have their own issues too. But they want out of the relationship, and they might be asking for a protective order, or just go ahead and just file for divorce. And maybe one party in the relationship is convinced that the other party isn't fit to be in that child's life. And I have to explain to them, well, no, it's actually harder than you think to take a child out of a person's life. Even if there is a history of violence, it's not always possible. There's usually the judge will make little exceptions in the divorce order or the protective order to maintain that ability for the abuser to still have some level of access to their kids, whether it's a video visitation or a true 50-50. That's something you have to consider. And also the other problem is a lot of people, when they come to me, they don't actually really understand like what a divorce is, especially if there's kids involved. There's this little tiny thing you got to do. It's called co-parenting, and it can be hell. Especially if you've made the decision that you're done with the other spouse, you just want them out of their life. It's when there's kids involved, it's not that simple. You have to make the children, if there's an order in place, you have to make the children available during the other person's periods of possession. And I've had situations without breaching confidentiality. I've had situations where both spouses are veterans. They both have a rating, and it's probably one of the messiest divorces and child custody matters I've ever seen. And yes, there was a history of drugs and alcohol. And, as a divorce lawyer, I'm just doing the best I can to try to put something in place that's within tolerances of both parties without too much court intervention. And let's be honest, a lot of the veterans, they're not rich people, and they can't, they can't afford to take something to the Texas Supreme Court. And I would, for ethical reasons, I wanted to encourage them to anyways. I would just say, let's do something that's in the best interest of the kids, that protects your possession and access to the children, and something that's fair on the property division. But no one's going to walk out of this feeling like they struck a home run, So that's just something that I have to deal with. And there's a lot of tears in my office when I have to explain to a spouse that, yeah, just because you were abused, or just because you're making an allegation of abuse doesn't automatically entitle you to a disproportionate share. So it's because, someone, maybe the veteran did something crappy to the spouse, or the spouse did something crappy to the veteran. I get it, but that doesn't necessarily entitle one spouse to maybe a small disproportionate share, but that small 1%, 2%, 3% that you're fighting for, it's when you look at what 1% is actually worth, you have to assess that and be like, wow, is it really worth going to court over? I mean, if the entire marital estate is underwater because of credit card debt, and there's nothing really to fight over financially, it's really just like who's taking a debt in a divorce. Is that really something that needs to go in front of a judge, or can't we just settle it outside of court? And the good news is, as a domestic violence lawyer, when I get these cases, a lot of times the cases are so messy on both sides. I mean, both sides are doing adultery, cruel treatment, abandonment. There's all these, just so much evidence on both sides that neither side wants this to go in front of a judge. So it's better to just settle it at mediation. And so that's the good news, is that I can get the veteran, I can get them out of a toxic relationship without too much or any court intervention. But I'd rather not have to have that conversation with a veteran. I mean, trust me, as a family law attorney in the Houston area, I'm busy. I have a lot of cases, so I'm not here to try to, solicit business. And if anything, I'm asking you guys to take a look at what's possibly causing you to need a lawyer. And in my opinion, the untreated, the common denominators that I see is, drugs, alcohol, debt, and those things only aggravate the untreated PTSD. It doesn't actually fix anything. So I'm just here to encourage you to go out there, get that treatment, so, people like me and Benjamin don't have to see you in our office. But, we're there if you need us. If you guys had any questions, but I'd like to take some few questions and also kind of go around the room and let everyone kind of introduce themselves and tell us what you do. But again, if you have any questions, I already see some hands are raised. That's great. Just remember, for confidentiality, try not to use any identifying information about the other party, or hell, don't even just be careful about mentioning your own name. Just speak in general terms. And if you have a question, you can let me know down in the Facebook live chat or the Zoom chat. I'll read the question out to the group. Or if you just want to ask your question, that's fine. So let's go ahead and I'll take a few questions, criminal defense questions, or family law, and then we'll go around the room, and if people want to introduce themselves. So let's see here, who's first? Hey, Mr. Bohr.
Hi, I was wondering, emancipation in some states makes a minor like an adult. How does that affect family law? Like if there's kids at 13, 14, but they're emancipated?
If they're emancipated, okay, under Texas law, if they're emancipated, then it's called the disabilities of being a minor. The disabilities of being a minor is, you can't make certain legal decisions, you can't enter into contracts. But if you have those removed, then yeah, you can. You don't have those disabilities anymore, and you are allowed to make decisions as if you've reached the age of majority, which is 18 years old. Now, if a minor wants to. Now, back in the old days, when in Texas, we had shotgun weddings where if a man has sex with a female minor, then his options are, her dad's going to come and say, you're either going to marry her or I'm going to go to the police, and he's going to walk him down the aisle with the shotgun behind him, making sure he marries his daughter. That was kind of like the old way of doing things, and I guess it worked. But nowadays it's actually harder to do that. To emancipate a minor, it actually requires a court hearing. I've had cases where minors, they're maybe a boyfriend and girlfriend, they're teenagers, gets his girlfriend pregnant. and they come to me. I mean, there's no statutory rape because they fell within that time period. Maybe Benjamin could better answer it, like what the how many days apart you need to be in age in order for it to not be statutory rape. That's a criminal law question for Benjamin, not. But if there's no statutory rape and they want to get married, they need that emancipation, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, look, you could pay me to do an emancipation, or you could just wait this many months and then you can just go get married. Also if you want to have the fee waived, the marriage license fee, it's not a large fee, but if you want to have that waived, there's like a class you can take on how to have strong, healthy families. It's like defensive driving for getting a marriage license if you want to have it waived. But when I have that question about disabilities and minority or emancipation, I just look at the facts of the case, and I advise the client, okay, we can do this, or you can wait until like you're 17 and then get married. So, but did that answer your question at all, or did I mess it up?
Yeah, that helped helped a lot. Like I was wondering, like, how does that work with the military courts when you're emancipated and enlisted? Like when you're like a youth, like how does that work with emancipation, or like deploying or that kind of thing?
If the recruiter, if you can get an emancipation and it's the recruiter will let you sign an enlistment agreement, then you belong to the military. That's kind of outside of family law. But I mean, if you follow the process that the recruiter is asking you to follow, so you can enlist, I legally there's no problem. But that's not really inside the Texas Family Code. Okay, here, let me see here. Mr. Sherwood?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. First, I want to thank Chris and Ben for having this webinar. It means a lot, as far as trying to figure out how to better serve our veterans. But the one problem is that you keep mentioning over and over again, and it's, unless we destigmatize this military service and what these veterans are faced with in your own cases and everybody else's cases, that, this is really an occupational hazard. They're not mentally ill, they're not mental illness, but yet if you keep pointing a finger at them and tell them they are, then they're not going to get any kind of help, because the VA, being honest, the VA is just tickled to keep pouring drugs down there and watching the check stop because of suicide and things like this. In the case of the family, part of your part is to make sure there's a breakup of the family in amenable ways, but it's also, if you can get the family back together by whatever means it takes, sometimes that's also good, because obviously at one point both sides of the marriage were good and they enjoyed each other, and with this loss of self-esteem, self-trust, self-confidence coming out of the military, there's not a whole lot of things that are going to go ahead and rebuild that self-trust, self-confidence, self-esteem, except by healing from the inside. You can put a Band-Aid on everything, but Band-Aids don't heal. They just kind of cover it up until it breaks through again. But if you can heal somebody from the inside out, then you're going to do that person, bringing them back to who they were. And yes, I am the founder of a service dog program that we've been very successful because of the fact our veterans have bought into it, of training their own dogs, becoming a dog trainer, giving up that military MOS to have a new MOS as a dog trainer. And they get to reestablish that they are broken, but they're fixable. And they're fixable because they go through the program, training the dog from start to finish. They're not waiting. The dog can alert them. The dog has the ability to smell that adrenaline and cortisol. You made reference to that little chihuahua in the back of your, medulla oblongata. Well, the dog's telling you, if you're paying attention to that chihuahua, if you get a chihuahua on the outside, or any dog on the outside, and they're starting to try to get your attention, well, maybe that's going to go ahead and refocus you. And like I said, it's everybody has memories from high school, grade school, growing up, military, whatever. But sometimes you're held hostage by those demon memories, and the ability of the dog to alert you when you're triggered, not when you're at that threshold of fight or flight, gives you the ability of controlling the narrative and minimizing the effect, because the dog has you releasing that oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, and dopamine, and it actually goes ahead and counteracts that adrenaline and cortisol that's released when you're triggered for whatever event. Has Tatsal's dogs prevented suicide? Yes, a lot of them. Has Tatsal's dogs also prevented divorce? I wish more than they have, but they have helped families reunite, because when the wife sees that change in the husband towards the family, towards how the relationship is because of that dog, they all of a sudden see that the dog has helped him become the person he was. You know, yes, some wives get jealous of the dog because he spends more time with the dog, but then again, he's able to function as a family member because he's not taking all those drugs that they have side effects. And the only reason they're using the drugs in the VA and the military is the side effect profile, because they don't have any mechanisms of action for the actual disease case. And like I said, when they want to keep on going, and if we can't change the culture to look at everything a little bit different, we're going to be dooming ourselves to the same thing over and over again, and it's not going to change. But like I said, you know, it's getting what's going to make that veteran become more confident in himself that he can accomplish something. There's a lot of therapies that will bring back that feeling of confidence, self-esteem, and self-trust. The unfortunate part is you have to get to the point where you're triggered to go ahead and start using those therapies. With the dog has a nose, and the dog picks up on the smell a lot sooner than having to get to that threshold of fight or flight. But, you know, it's whatever is, it's not a cookie cutter treatment program. And they just have to realize that a lot of the drugs causes more of the problems in the family because of the side effect profiles. And like I said, your idea is to go ahead and, you know, basically try to keep that family together without breaking everybody up, because you're on both sides of the fence, try and take care of the kids, the wife and the husband. And Benjamin, you're on the fence trying to keep them safe and sound so that they can move forward in their life because of what's happened, because of other things that have occurred. And it's a balancing act. And it's a balancing act for everybody that's involved in any organization, whether it's whatever nonprofit's involved. Even the VA has to go ahead and look in the mirror and say, are we living up to our potential, or are we letting some of these veterans down? And the military has to do the same thing. Don't send them back to the VA if we're not taking care of them here, because then they get left off in the gap between both organizations. But like I said, you know, it's about what can we do better to go ahead and get that veteran to be the person he was before he went in the military. Because they started out with a mission that they wanted to go ahead and do well for the country, to protect the country. And no, they're not going to run home and tell their wives what they saw, because they're not going to share it with them, because that wasn't their job to go to war and then tell everybody about the stories. They kind of keep it to themselves, and it eats up on it, and it eats away their self-confidence, self-trust, self-esteem. And that's something that needs to be reestablished as quickly as you can, with whatever means you can. But certainly I can tell you, as a pharmacist, there are no drugs that build up self-confidence, self-esteem, and self-trust. But I want to thank you again for putting on this presentation. And PTSD, when I saw it, I thought, my God, you looked at my website and saw that PTSD stands for Participant Trained Service Dog. I thought that was the greatest thing, Participant Trained Service Dog in the law. Destigmatize these guys and don't point that finger at them that they've got a mental illness. They have an occupational hazard. And by refocusing on them, they start seeing that they're still good people. They just need to get back on track.
A comment on that. One thing, insight. I discovered a few insights myself after Iraq. Number one was it's hard to be angry at Al Qaeda when you have a puppy licking your face. If that's a good way to explain it, or it's hard to be mad at your drill instructor or your military supervisor or your squad leader who screwed you over. It's hard to be angry if, you're like, you've got that service puppy wanting your attention and nothing but your attention. Also, I talked to, without breaching confidentiality, I did have an insightful conversation with a sexual assault victim. PTSD, definitely, but some sexual trauma. Not a veteran, but I think it was an insightful conversation that I think I can kind of apply to this webinar. The victim had stated that she had been on antidepressants, but during the entire relationship, she kind of felt like she was trapped in a tiger cage with a tiger. And the question is, yeah, we could give her all the antidepressants in the world, but the tiger is still in the same cage with her. So what if we took the tiger out of the cage, and while we're at it, go ahead and take her out of the cage, get her out of that environment, and then maybe she doesn't need all this medication. So maybe the VA, their heart's in the right place, all the medication in the world, but maybe it's the wrong approach. Maybe helping the veteran fix their environment is what the correct answer is. That way they don't need, go after the root cause. And when I say environment, I don't mean like their housing situation. It can be just the environment that they let themselves be in, an environment where they're always vigilant or having certain types of avoidance behaviors or, ruminations, kind of, get them out of that tiger cage, that mental tiger cage. And then maybe they don't need all that medication. But no, I really appreciate the insight. Did we have any other questions? Please subscribe to my podcast. I got the link down in the comments. Go ahead.
No questions. Questions, Chris. Thanks again for hosting this, and I am subscribed to your podcast. I'm with the Easter Seals, and I put a link in the chat box to make sure that if you're looking for additional resources, all these are grant funded, and there's no cost to the veterans. Good to see Bart. See him out and about in Texas doing amazing things, and your benefits are right there. But if it's right across the street and you don't know it, it simply doesn't exist to you. Click there and see if we can help you out, whether it's regarding your finances, improving your credit, getting a house, or just getting back onto your road to recovery. Thanks, Chris.
All right. Did we want to, if there's any more questions, do we want to kind of go around the room a little bit and let everyone give us their elevator speech? No particular order. I'll just kind of, if anybody has something they would like to share with the group, share some links or subscribe buttons down in the chat. I'd appreciate it. Or if you're, go ahead. Might have to unmute yourself.
That was me waving goodbye. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate you.
Okay. Thank you, guys. All right. All right. Cool. All right, John, Benjamin, did you guys have anything else to share with this?
That's not mine.
Okay.
Thanks, Ben.
I'm doing my best to keep this right at an hour. All right, Mr. Sherwood.
Call me Bart, please.
Bart.
I just want to say the TATSAL mission is really to train the veteran and the dog together as a service dog team to improve their quality of life and prevent suicide. That's the name of the game, really, the veteran, is the preventing of the suicide. One day the VA may actually give out a true number of how many deaths they have, suicides, but the way it's going, it looks like it's a football between, the active duty and the veteran side, because nobody takes care of the reservists and National Guards as far as when they commit suicide. They're kind of the taint people. They taint real military, and they taint veterans yet, so nobody gets to claim them. But if they would just go ahead and be honest with all the states involved and all the veterans that have committed suicide, I think we could all handle it a lot better than second guessing them for how many suicides there were. In 2019, there were 549 veteran suicides just in Texas alone that never got reported. I was at a meeting and I just asked them, somebody from TVC jumped up and gave the answer, and it was like everybody looked at him in shock that somebody actually knew the figure. But, if they would just be honest and fair and treat everybody as an adult that could handle the rates, they would be far ahead of themselves. It's don't cover up. When you cover up, it's worse. Just be honest. Don't tell a lie, because one lie leads to another lie, leads to another lie. And, now we're down to 17 suicides a day, but we don't count the active duty people, and we don't count the National Guards and Reservists, and we don't count Texas, New York, California, Kentucky, North Carolina, South Carolina, Oklahoma. And it's like, just get on the boat, guys, and be honest. Let's not keep hiding everything.
I did have, as was a domestic violence lawyer, I do see people on their worst day. Sadly, I have had there were a few suicides over the last several years. My clients are going through some serious custody issues, family violence. Some were veterans, some were not veterans. I will say in every single one of them, drugs and alcohol were a factor. I will also say that think of it this way. Remember I mentioned the stress curve earlier, and I would like for you guys to kind of hold this thought. Imagine for a second, time. We have time on the x-axis like this. The likelihood of the relationship not being successful would be kind of like the y-axis. Likelihood of no success is way up here. Way down here is like low stress, successful marriage. And then we kind of got that stress curve in between. If the stress curve is really low and flat, then that means we have a stress-free, happy relationship. Unfortunately, that flat line does not exist. Every relationship has some level of stress. Now, if the stress curve gets way too high, way up high, spikes to the point of no return, that's when I get the phone call and somebody wants to schedule a consultation for a divorce or family violence or a custody matter or whatever. That's if the stress level gets too high in the relationship. Now, that I call it the stress curve. It's actually possible to flatten the curve, but to flatten the curve and remember, no marriage is going to have a perfectly flat stress curve. It's just not realistic, but there are things we can do to flatten the curve so it doesn't get to the point of no return. And that's when the divorce lawyer, criminal defense lawyer like Ben gets involved. So what we can do is remove the drugs, remove the alcohol, just like on my poster back here. But also, you don't really remove debt. That's not how it works. You have to figure out what's causing the debt and then address that. And then we can actually flatten the stress curve so it doesn't spike so high that family violence happens or you have to call the divorce lawyer because it's time to call it quits. Again, no marriage is going to be perfectly stress-free, but there are things we can remove from the equation. So I would say remove the drugs, remove the alcohol, find out what's causing the debt. Always, find out what's causing that, remove that, and then add things that would provide a safe environment, a stable environment, a nonviolent environment. Example of a safe environment, if you've got, family members always coming over and trying to take advantage, maybe it's time to, prioritize your relationship until, these third parties get the hell out of here. That'll be, make the environment more safe. Stable. If you're always getting eviction notices or having trouble paying the rent, find out what's going on. Maybe your lifestyle exceeds your means. You're just you need to act your wage, like Dave Ramsey says. Kind of modify your lifestyle so you can have a more stable environment. Because if you're, they call it house broke, that's where you have this big mansion, but you're living paycheck to paycheck because you bought more than you should have. It's maybe buy something with more within your means. That would bring more stability. So we talked about safe, we talked about stable, nonviolent. I support the Second Amendment and all that, but if there's violence in the house, you got to remove things that are making it violent. If there's something that's going to get you in trouble, you got to really seriously assess that. So remove the drugs, the alcohol, the debt, and add things that make the environment more safe, stable, and nonviolent. Do those things. I think you can actually flatten the stress curve, and then you don't have to ever come to my office, or hopefully not to Ben's either. So that's all. That's kind of all I wanted to leave you guys with. Cool.
Hey, Chris, I just wanted to say just a couple things, if it's all right.
Yeah.
Again, I just want to thank everybody for joining up here. I met Chris a couple months back at a business expo, and we shared our stories together, and found out that we both have the same goal in mind, is to provide services for the veterans that need them. And he offered his time and spoke with Ben as well, and they both have been gracious enough to spend this hour with us. I know their hourly rates are very expensive because they got an amazing job, but they bestowed like some good knowledge on here, and they've opened up the forum for everybody. And with our organization, Veterans Stand Together, we want to be able to partner with different like-minded individuals to provide different services and things for that, for the veterans. Just like Bart, thank you for sharing about your dog service. That's amazing. That's something that I got to see firsthand out in Los Angeles with another organization, and it's amazing. It does do some real work with individuals, because it brings them out of themselves, and that's amazing. But with Easter Seals as well, thank you for bringing that up. I would love to talk with you as well. Maybe we can collaborate and partner up on a couple different things. Our organization is just starting out here. We're starting to get leads into the different things that are happening out here in Houston, and all we want to do is just be of service, for everybody. So we'll be getting bigger. We'll be creating our own events, things of that nature. Hopefully we'll be able to do this again with Chris and Ben a couple months down the road. If you guys have any other veterans that could possibly take advantage of this or see this as an asset, please do. These great gentlemen have given their time, and they've offered additional time to put on another one of these webinars. So I just really want to say thank you again. I posted up our website on the chat. I'm also going to throw up my direct cell phone in case any of you guys have any questions, but I will also be sending out emails to everybody as well, even to the individuals. And I'll put my name, sorry.
Cool, thank you. I need that cell phone. Thanks.
Yeah, I had to change my very first cell phone when I got out here. There was issues. That's my number going forward. I moved out here from Los Angeles in August. Permanently moved out here because I've always wanted to move into Texas. I had to wait till my children became adults because I wanted them raised properly. So now I'm out here. I'm going to try to drag them out here too. But we're here for you guys. So if you need anything, give us a call. Let us know. We've got a lot of different things going on. We're starting up apprenticeships. So if there's a certain type of job that you want, a couple of the ones that we're doing is project management. Security professional. We're looking into the cybersecurity. We have about another 14 apprenticeships that we can access. And as long as there's the need and the high growth to be able to afford the things that you need and actually have growth within your new career, that's what we're here for too. We help out with job placement. We'll redo your resumes. We do VA claims, basically anything that you need help with. If we can't do it, then what we do is we partner with other organizations within the area and move along with you. So we're here for you if you need anything. Again, my name is John Alvarez. I just want to say thank you to Chris and Ben. You guys are amazing, great knowledge. And hopefully you guys don't have to use their services, but they're quality.
Trust me. No, I'm trust me. I'm doing well for myself. Don't worry about me. I would prefer veterans like myself not to be in a bad situation, and I'd rather, kind of scare the veteran a little bit into getting the treatment that they need, so they don't have to have to be in a situation to need my or Benjamin's services. So
Yeah, it's not fun being on the receiving end of those.
you don't want to be in these situations.
Right. I personally had to use yours, and then I've been against Ben in court before. Not him particularly, but in the other state.
Okay.
Yeah, I was law enforcement out in California for 10 years.
Okay, so you know how drugs and alcohol can affect people's decision making. You probably see that a
All
lot.
too well. Oh, way too well, unfortunately. But
Yeah,
if anybody else have any questions, feel free.
I will say one thing, guys. Kind of a personal thing. I had pretty severe PTSD after Iraq. It took me a little while, but I made the personal decision that alcohol is not actually my friend. I thought it was my friend. I was in Germany for a while. Trust me, I was clubbing all the time, but I grew up a little bit and decided it was not my friend, and that's something I moved away from. It was one of the best decisions I ever made. So cool. All right. Well, thank you, guys. I guess that's it. Unless you have anything else for me, I'll go ahead and shut this down. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I will post this on. You will find this on YouTube later.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everybody else, for showing up.
Yeah.
All right.
Have a good rest of your
Bye-bye.
night.